Hello everybody, welcome back to Through the Bible in 5 Minutes. Today we take a look at the book of 2 Samuel and its surprising Easter connection. Well, here's how it starts. 2 Samuel begins immediately after the death of Saul and his sons at the hands of the Philistines. A young man, an Amalekite, runs for 3 days to tell David the news. Thinking that he's going to receive a reward, he falsely claims to have killed Saul with his own hands. Well, his testimony sealed his fate. David had never dared to touch Saul with his own hands, though they had many opportunities. When he hears the Amalekites say that he dared to kill the Lord's anointed, David says to him, "Your testimony has sealed your fate from your own lips." And he orders one of his men to kill the messenger. After the death of Saul, Saul's general Abner rallies the troops, installs a puppet king, Ishbosheth, and wages war against David and his men. In one of those battles, Abner kills the brother of David's commanding general Joab. Sometime after that, Abner strikes a peace deal with David, and it looks as if everything is going to be fine. But Joab calls Abner aside as if to tell him a secret, and then stabs him repeatedly to avenge the death of his brother. Then two of Ishbosheth's other commanding officers pull him aside and stab and kill Ishbosheth, thinking that will bring peace and endear them to David. They made the same mistake as the young Amalekite, and they suffered the same fate, dying at the hands of David and his men for daring to kill the second king of Israel. But after the death of Ishbosheth, the other tribal leaders of Israel gather together, make peace with David, and declare him for the first time to be the king of the entire nation. Now with Israel united, David mobilizes their combined military force to take on their enemies. First of all, he captures the city of Jerusalem from the Jebusites and makes it his capital city. Then he takes on the remaining cities in Jerusalem that were still in Israel, that were still held by the original inhabitants, and captures them. Now with the land secured, he begins to attack the enemies on Israel's border. First the Philistines, then the Moabites, and finally the Arameans, defeating all of them. When the dust settles, the land of Israel stretches from the border of Egypt all the way up to the river Euphrates, fulfilling a promise of God given to Abraham many centuries before. But the best is yet to come. 2 Samuel ends with the story of a plague that God sent upon Israel as a punishment for the sins of David and the people. An avenging angel killed 70,000 Israelites from one end of the country down to the other. But when the angel arrived in Jerusalem, God said, "Stop, enough killing." It was on that very spot where the angel stood that was the land of a man named Araunah, a Jebusite. It was on his threshing floor where the angel was when God said, "Stop." David rushed out to that spot, and he asked Araunah to sell him that threshing floor as well as his oxen and the yokes used for driving the oxen, so that David could offer sacrifices to God on that spot. Araunah said, "No, my lord, take it all. I give it to you, the land, the oxen, the yokes." But David said, "No, I will not sacrifice burnt offerings to the Lord my God, which cost me nothing." So David bought it all, and on that spot, the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite offered burnt offerings as a covering for sin and fellowship offerings, signifying that now there was peace again with God. But oh, there's far more to this story. All of this happened, the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, on Mount Moriah. Moriah means the appearance of Yahweh. It was given that name centuries before by Abraham, who had traveled many miles to that very spot and there offered up his son Isaac as a sacrifice to the Lord. But when God saw that Abraham was really going to go through with it, he appeared and said, "Stop, don't do it." And there God provided a lamb for the sacrifice. It was on this very spot, Mount Moriah, where Solomon, David's son, later built the temple of the Lord, so that many thousands of lambs were sacrificed in this place to cover over for sins, if even temporarily. It wasn't until a perfect lamb appeared, the spotless, sinless Son of God, that sin was dealt with once and for all. When Jesus died on Golgotha, within sight of Mount Moriah, of the Temple Mount, the veil on the temple, on this site, was torn in half from top to bottom, signifying that sins were now dealt with completely and permanently, and the way was opened for people to finally have peace and fellowship with God. The Easter story started way back in Genesis when the Lord appeared in this spot, providing a lamb. It continues in the book of 2 Samuel with God stopping judgment at this very space, and then it culminates on Easter Sunday morning when Jesus, no longer dead, appears, bursting forth from the grave to live in peace and fellowship with his Father and his people forever. That's the Easter story. Happy Easter.